traditional hypnosis because traditional hypnosis used formal induction procedures. Somebody was told, I am going to hypnotize you. Look at this ring, you are feeling tired and sleepy. Look at my eyes, you are feeling tired and sleepy. Look at this cup, you are feeling tired and sleepy, going deeply into hypnosis. This is a formal induction procedure. Milton Erickson was very indirect and informal. He would simply begin to tell people stories. Many of the stories had paradoxes in them, and if the client was beginning to accept the paradox and not question it, and not question the contradictions, Erickson knew the person was becoming hypnotized. We will talk more about that a little later. It was Ernest Hilgard who conducted some of the best experiments with hypnosis and who introduced the idea of neo-dissociation, a type of dissociation or drawing back from regular, ordinary daytime activities to an internalized activity where the hypnotist could make suggestions that would not be questioned and that would be well received. The last person on the list is Theodore Barber. And it was Barber who began to question both the Mesmer approach and the formal induction approach and the Erickson approach. He said, all of these approaches mystify hypnosis. They say hypnosis is a trance, it's an altered state of consciousness. But I can do the same things without formal trance induction and without telling paradoxical stories. All I have to do is to have a conversation with the subject, get the subject to pay attention, and motivate the subject by what I say. And I get everything that hypnotists can get with their more elaborate procedures. So Barber's position was a very sharp break with the past, just as the English people had a very sharp break with Mesmer. So you can see that there have been a variety of approaches to hypnosis over the years. Yesterday, when I spoke to the students, I said that in the United States today we have 3 different groups of people who use hypnosis. One uses formal trance induction. And I already told you about formal trance induction, where the situation is defined as hypnosis, where somebody pays attention to a stimulus and is told that their eyes are getting tired and they're going deeply into an altered state, deeply into relaxation. The second is the informal trance induction, like Milton Erickson and others, who do not use a formal induction, but who tell stories, who direct the subject's attention inward by other means, or who even use self-hypnosis. And then the third group of practitioners are the no-trance induction people, like, for example, Theodore Barber and his associates, who used motivated instructions, or even like the followers of Jung and Freud, who used free association and waking imagination, which served the same purposes of hypnosis, but without using any type of formal or informal trance induction. Now, in 1950, the American Medical Association approved the use of hypnosis by physicians. This was a very, very important step in legitimizing hypnosis. In 1955, the British Medical Association did the same thing, and an article was published in its journal approving the use of hypnosis by qualified people. In 1958, the International Council on Mental Health approved the use of hypnosis, and shortly afterwards, the American Psychological Association approved the use of hypnosis, and now we have a division for psychological hypnosis in the American Psychological Association. There is still resistance to hypnosis among many people, physicians, psychotherapists, and others, for very illogical reasons, claiming that hypnosis weakens the will, claiming claiming that hypnosis superimposes one person's ideas on another person. But people who study hypnosis realize that these stereotypes are not true, but they result mainly from seeing hypnosis on television, in the movies, and on the stage, where for purposes of entertainment, a practitioner will use very dramatic and flamboyant techniques to hypnotize people, and then will make them do funny and ridiculous things for the purposes of entertainment. Well, that, of course, is not medical hypnosis, it's not psychotherapeutic hypnosis, but unfortunately, that is the type of hypnosis that people are exposed to in general. Now, this calls into question, what do I think hypnosis is? If some people don't like the term, and if other people use the term differently, is there a consensus? Well, I would like to suggest to you my definition of hypnosis. And you can take it, you can leave it, you can form your own. But I think that my definition will be very comprehensive, because I define it this way. Hypnosis is a word used to describe the regulation of attention, whether by oneself or by another person or persons, to facilitate responsiveness to suggestions concerning one's experience and behavior. So once again, let me repeat that, because this is the definition that I will be using during the course of my time. Hypnosis is a word used to describe the regulation of attention, whether by oneself or by another person or persons, to facilitate responsiveness to suggestions concerning one's experience and behavior. Now, let me tell you what I think the advantages are of this definition. I'm simply saying that hypnosis is a word. This demystifies hypnosis. Hypnosis is not a thing. The word is not a thing. Hypnosis is a word, but there can be other words used to describe the same phenomenon. If people don't like the word hypnosis, they can come up with something else. And it's a word used to describe the regulation of attention. So, a key element of all hypnosis is the regulation of attention, the change in attention, usually from taking attention outward to taking attention inward. And this regulation of attention can be done by oneself, as in self-hypnosis. It can be done by another person, or it can be done by a group of people. Sometimes more than one hypnotist will work with a client. Now, why is attention regulated? Well, it's to facilitate responsiveness to suggestions. And again, the suggestions can come from oneself, they can come from the hypnotist, or from a group of people. And these suggestions concern experience and behavior. Now, just think it over, and I think that you will see that this very short definition is comprehensive enough to cover everything that is done under the term hypnosis, which means the key elements of hypnosis are attention and responsiveness. In hypnosis, you respond to suggestion because your attention has been changed or regulated. Now, that is basically what I would like to say in terms of introduction. So, the people who came in a little bit late have not really missed too much, because these have all been introductory concepts. At this point, let me pause for just a few minutes to see if we have any questions before we proceed. Okay, if not, let me ask if it is now convenient to show the slides. Is it convenient now, or would you like to do this after the break? People do audio visuals. Okay, I think the consensus is we will do this after the break. have some slides to show you about the next topic. Now, the type of hypnosis that I use and the type of perspective that I have on hypnosis, I call mythological hypnosis. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I use the word mythology, because it goes back to the very first hypnotists. Now, there were hypnotists even before the days of Anton Mesmer. There is a long tradition of hypnosis in China and India. There's a long tradition of hypnosis among Indians in North and South America. There's a long tradition of hypnosis with early healers. But if you go back 30,000, 40,000 years, you will find that the very first healers were the shamans. Now, they were called shamans in Siberia, that is where the word originated. They were called by other words in other cultures. But these were the very first healers, the first psychotherapists, the first physicians, the first hypnotists, the first storytellers, the first creative artists, the first weather forecasters, and the first actors. Shamans were very remarkable people. They were in charge of the spiritual life of their tribe, just as the chief was in charge of the political and military life of the tribe. The shamans and the chiefs worked together in most cases, one being in charge of the spirit, one being in charge of the government. Now, I'm going to give you a definition of shaman, because maybe some of you are not too familiar with this concept, but it's a very, very important concept in the history of healing and medicine and psychotherapy. Shamans are men and women who deliberately change their consciousness, deliberately regulate their attention, so as to enter into what they consider to be the spirit world, another reality. They bring back information from that other reality, and they use this information to help and heal the people of their tribe. Now, what sort of information do they bring back? Well, information about medicines and herbs, information about prayers, information about spirits, information about rituals, information about stories, about myths. Shamans are very imaginative people, and they have a very rich inner life. Now, instead of talking about the spirit world, from a psychological point of view, we would say they enter into their realm of imagination. And that is where they get the information, because the shamans are highly creative and highly imaginative. When these shamans were working with people from their tribe, they did a great deal of work with suggestion and focus. They worked with imagery and imagination. They worked with metaphor and symbolism. They worked with ritual and altered states of consciousness. In other words, they worked with all of the phenomena that hypnotists work with today. Now, I have had a great deal of contact with shamans over the years, and I know one shaman in North America whose name is Rolling Thunder. He is a Native American medicine man. Rolling Thunder qualifies as a shaman because he has a tribe of people with whom he works, and he lives in Nevada with this group. He deliberately alters his consciousness. He claims to have out-of-body experiences. He claims to change himself into a silk. claims to be able to talk with plants and have the plants tell him what they are used for, what medicines they can provide. He claims to be able to talk with spirits. He claims to be able to take poisonous substances out of the bodies of his clients. And Rolling Thunder is very interested in hypnosis. And he has watched me use hypnosis on many occasions. And now he uses hypnosis himself with some of his clients. Because what he does with hypnosis is very similar to what he has done for many, many decades with his tribal medicine and tribal techniques. Now, I'm going to give you a little example of what Rolling Thunder does. One time when I visited him, there was a young American Indian who had come to him for help with his alcoholism problem. And this was a young man, no older than 25, but he had had very serious problems with alcohol for 10 years. And it was affecting his liver, it was affecting his brain, and he knew that it was going to kill him if he did not stop. But as you know, alcoholics cannot make up their mind to stop and then stop. Alcoholism is very deep-seated habit. So Rolling Thunder had been working with him for several weeks, using fasting, taking him into the sweat lodge and trying to get him to sweat poisons from his body, having him reconnect with the traditions of his ancestors. And when I came, there was a large campfire, and for 1.5 hours, the musicians were drumming on the drums and playing music. Now, this was a very steady drum beat, and this was designed to alter their consciousness. So here we have a parallel to hypnosis. There were 50 people sitting around the campfire, and Rolling Thunder called up Robert and told me to go and use hypnosis with him. Now, I had never met Robert before. I had no opportunity to give him any tests for hypnotic responsiveness, such as the test that we talked about yesterday, the body sway test, the eye roll test, the arm lowering test. I had no chance to do that. So, what I did was simply have him close his eyes, and I had him start to relax, and then I had him evoke some imagery. I had him get in contact with the feeling that he had in his body when he craved alcohol. And once he was in touch with that feeling, I asked him what picture, what image that suggested. And he immediately said, it is a monster out to kill me. So I said, fine, remember that image. Now, let's see if you can be aware of all of the 50 people in your tribe who are here to help you. They are going to give you a gift by which you can conquer this monster. What gift are they going to give you? And he said, they're giving you a bow and arrow. It is a sacred bow and arrow from the tradition of this tribe. I said, fine. Now, try to imagine that you are taking the bow and the arrow and you are killing the monster. It will only take one arrow to kill it. And so he imagined that the monster was dead. I said, now, let's suppose that you want to drink something that is very good for you rather than something very bad for you. He said, yes, I would like some tea and some fruit juice. So I said, imagine that you have a wide variety of teas and fruit juices. Take one and drink it, and you will feel great satisfaction. Now, I am giving you a summary of what I did because, of course, this took a long time to very slowly develop the imagery and the meaning of the imagery. Because what he was doing was to deal with symbol and metaphor. Remember that a symbol represents something else. A symbol is an image that represents something else. A metaphor is a series of words that represent something else, or a series of activities that represent something else. And this is something that is often done in hypnosis. It's done all the time in dreams. It's done in fantasy, daydreaming, and reverie. People make metaphors and symbols easily, and also the stuff that myths are made out of. And so in my mythological approach to hypnosis, I do a great deal of work with symbol and metaphor. I finished with Robert, and then Rolling Thunder did a traditional Native American ceremony. He went to Robert and made a sacrifice of raw meat, and burned the raw meat, and buried it. And then Rolling Thunder took an eagle's feather and began to poke Robert at different points in his body. And Robert began to wince in pain at certain of those points. And then Rolling Thunder took his mouth, applied his mouth to those areas, and said he was sucking the poison. And then he spit something black into a pail. Now, I suspect that this was tobacco juice. Not anything from the body itself. But it doesn't matter, because this was a symbol of the poisons in his body. And by seeing that symbolized, he could imagine the poisons coming out of his body. Rolling Thunder chanted, and he sang, and he prayed. The ceremony went on for 3 hours. And then Robert was exhausted and went to bed. The next day, Robert woke up and he said that for the first time in years, he had no desire to drink alcohol. And for the rest of the week, he had no desire to drink alcohol. And now, 5 years later, he has had no desire to drink alcohol. So this is a very successful treatment. But remember, the campfire ceremony was the last in a whole series of treatments. For several months, there had been fasting, prayer, purification in the sweat lodge, leading up to the large ceremony in the campfire where I used hypnosis and Rolling Thunder used techniques similar to hypnosis. And then there was a follow-up, because I had suggested to Robert that whenever he had the desire to drink, he would close his eyes and imagine the monster, bring in the bow and arrow and shoot the monster, and then open his eyes and drink some fruit juice or drink some tea. So I gave him some homework assignments where he could do these imagery exercises by himself. Now, obviously, this technique does not always work, but here's an occasion where it did work. There was a supportive cultural context for this. And I would say that Robert gave up an old myth and created a new myth. He gave up the myth of himself as an alcoholic. He produced the myth of himself as being sober and somebody who was able to fight and resist the monster alcohol that was trying to kill him. So this is an example of what I mean by mythological approach to hypnosis. He now had a new story to his life. He had brought the old story to a close, and he was now starting a new story, a new chapter, a new episode. So, in the mythological approach to hypnosis, we must, again, make a definition. And I'm going to give you a definition of myth. In the Western world, myth has received very bad notices. Commonly, a myth is looked upon as a falsehood. But it's not that simple. Remember that back in ancient times, especially here in Italy, which has such a rich tradition of mythology, myths served very important functions. They explained the world. And the great cultural myths were indispensable. They explained how the world worked. There was lightning. Well, lightning was made by Jupiter, by Jupiter's assistant Vulcan, who forged the lightning on his equipment, gave it to Jupiter, and Jupiter would have fun throwing the lightning down to the earth to frighten human beings and demonstrate his power. You have a wonderful legacy of mythology, not only in Italy, but in Greece, Scandinavia, in Central Europe, in Britain. And these myths performed 4 different functions. The first function was explanation. They explained how the world worked. But the second function was psychological. They gave meaning meaning to people's work, play, and love activities. The third was social.